cranial nerve. This glossopharyngeal nerve supplies two major areas, that is the tongue and the pharynx. But there are other places where this nerve supplies, which we'll see in a moment. The glossopharyngeal nerve has four major nuclei that are found within the medulla oblongata. These nuclei include, this one in blue is called nucleus ambiguous. The one in green is called inferior celebratory nucleus. The other one in red is called nucleus obstructus solitarius. And the one in black is called spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. These are the four important nuclei that their own axons combine together to form the glossopharyngeal nerve. And this nerve is being formed from within the substance of the medulla oblongata. The nerve gets out of the cranial cavity through a foramen known as jugular foramen. This jugular foramen contains three nerves. One of these nerves is the glossopharyngeal nerve. You get it? So I will also discuss the other nerves that are contained within this jugular foramen. So the glossopharyngeal nerve, as it comes inside the jugular foramen, it is associated with two major ganglia. One of the ganglion is superior glossopharyngeal ganglion. The other one is inferior glossopharyngeal ganglion. The superior glossopharyngeal ganglion lies within the jugular foramen, while the inferior glossopharyngeal ganglion lies below the jugular foramen. So, in the real sense, glossopharyngeal nerve is a mixed nerve. That means it is both motor and sensory. So, the motor fibers, they originate from the nucleus ambiguous, and so these fibers, as they pass through the glossopharyngeal nerve, the fibers go and supply one muscle known as stylopharyngeus. And this stylopharyngeus is a muscle that originates from the styloid process, and then it attaches into the pharyngeal wall. So glossopharyngeal nerve is the only, this muscle is the only muscle that is being supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. Apart from this muscle, no any other muscle that has been supplied by this nerve. So we have seen the motor supply of this glossopharyngeal nerve. Others are to do with, either of these remaining three nuclei. So the second nucleus is the inferior celebratory nucleus. This inferior celebratory nucleus, the fibers, as they come out from that nucleus, the axons, as they come out from this nucleus, the fibers get out of the inferior glossopharyngeal nucleus as what we call tympanic nerve of Jacobson. So this tympanic nerve of Jacobson, it goes into the middle ear. So as it goes into the middle ear, if you can remember, I discussed the middle ear with you while I was discussing the facial nerve. And so I said that the middle ear cavity has four walls: medial wall, lateral wall, anterior wall, and posterior wall, together with the floor and the roof. So in the medial wall of the middle ear cavity, this tympanic nerve of Jacobson forms a plexus around that area before it finally gets out of the middle ear cavity to the petrotympanic fissure into the cranial cavity as the lesser petrosal nerve. This lesser petrosal nerve, if you can remember, I discussed the greater petrosal nerve, which is, a branch from the facial nerve. So this lesser petrosal nerve enters into the foramen ovale together with the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve. I'm sure you can remember that the trigeminal nerve has three divisions: ophthalmic, the maxillary, and the mandibular. The mandibular one is the one that passes through the foramen ovale. So the mandibular nerve is together with the lesser petrosal nerve there. And so as soon as this nerve comes out of the foramen ovale, the nerve synapses within the optic ganglion. So the optic ganglion now, the axons from this optic ganglion, the postganglionic parasympathetic fibers go and supply the parotid gland. So that means this lesser petrosal nerve, its own axons are the pre-ganglionic parasympathetic fibers. So the postganglionic fibers are the ones that supply the parotid gland, so which is secretomotor to the parotid gland. So that is that. So again, the the nucleus of tractus solitarius axons from this, axons from the test, this nucleus of tractus solitarius is responsible for the test, information that is coming from the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. If you can remember, we said that anterior 2/3 of the tongue, test sensation is being carried through the coda tympani, which is part of the facial nerve, as we discussed before. So the posterior 1/3 of the tongue, test sensation is being carried through this, nerve fibers that finally pass through the glossopharyngeal nerve to reach the nucleus of tractus solitarius. So posterior 1/3 of the tongue, test sensation is being carried through this glossopharyngeal nerve to the nucleus of tractus solitarius here. So again, the carotid artery, it divides into two parts. We have the internal carotid artery, which is this one, and then we have the external carotid artery, which is this one. So as this artery divides, the internal carotid artery has its own beginning. There is a dilatation of that artery. And that dilatation of that artery is what we call carotid sinus. So from the carotid sinus, there are some receptors there. So if the pressure inside the blood vessels changes, so the changes in the blood pressure within the blood is being taken through, these receptors, and then through this nerve, through this glossopharyngeal nerve, and the fibers they also, meet the nucleus of tractus solitarius. Similarly, there are bodies in between both external carotid artery and the internal carotid artery. These bodies are called carotid bodies. The carotid bodies are responsible for the sensing of the changes in the concentration of the oxygen within circulation. So if the oxygen level in the blood is low or it is high, this carotid body also sense it. So they are just serving as a chemoreceptor kind of bodies. So the chemoreceptors from these carotid bodies, together with the baroreceptors from the carotid sinus, this information is being carried through the glossopharyngeal nerve to the nucleus of tractus solitarius. So I'm sure there is no, there is no problem with this. And so the next, nucleus is spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So sensation from the posterior 1/3 of the tongue, that is sensation for the pain, temperature, and pressure, and also from the soft palate, the mucous membrane of the soft palate, plus the mucous membrane of the pharynx, as well as the mucous membrane around the tonsils. All this, information regarding pain, temperature, and pressure from the mucosa of the soft palate, from the mucosa around the tonsils, from the mucosa in the pharynx, and from the mucosa from the posterior 1/3 of the tongue. All this information for all this sensation, pain, temperature, and pressure is being carried through this glossopharyngeal nerve, and then the nerve fibers, end or terminate into the nucleus of tractus solitarius. Are you clear? Similarly, sensation from the middle ear cavity. You understand? Sensory information like changes in the, temperature or pain or, pressure inside the middle ear cavity, together with the sensation around the tympanic membrane. The tympanic membrane separates the external ear from the middle ear. So sensation regarding pain, temperature, and pressure around the inner and outer part of the tympanic membrane, plus sensation from the external ear and part of the pinna, all are carried through this, tympanic nerve of Jacobson is associated with this, and so the nerve fibers pass through this tympanic nerve of Jacobson, and then they finally reach the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So we have seen all this sensation, and the motor supply of this glossopharyngeal nerve. So once there is a lesion associated with this nerve, obviously if it is before it enters into the jugular foramen, what happens? All these are going to be abolished. That means there will be no sensation of taste that is going to be carried from the posterior one third of the tongue into that side. Only taste that will be carried from the anterior two third through the facial nerve. You know that. Similarly, sensation, the sensation for the pain, temperature, and pressure from the posterior one third of the tongue, mucosa of the soft palate, and that of the area around the tonsils, also from the pharynx, that one is also going to be abolished. Similarly, this muscle is going to be paralyzed. That means the stylopharyngeus is going to be paralyzed because it is the only nerve that is supplying that muscle. So there will be paralysis of that stylopharyngeus. Similarly, there will be no, the baroreceptors and the chemoreceptors in the carotid body and the baroreceptors in the carotid sinus. All this information that have been taken through the glossopharyngeal nerve, if there is damage to this glossopharyngeal nerve, this, the control or regulation of the blood pressure and the regulation of the oxygen concentration within the circulation is also going to be abolished. Are you clear? So, by and large, again, the supply to the parotid gland, it's not the only salivary gland that is being, responsible for the secretion of our own saliva. We have submandibular gland, and then we have sublingual gland. These two glands, they also secrete saliva. So that means even if glossopharyngeal nerve is damaged, the secretion of saliva will continue, right? But the only thing is that maybe the quantity is going to reduce since the salivary gland, the parotid gland is also contributing to the quantity of amount of the saliva that, is being secreted on daily basis. So, by and large, this is, glossopharyngeal nerve. Let us have a break, come back, and then we discuss another nerve.